After 40 years of hard work, I finally built a small house by Okanagan Lake, a place I thought I'd spend the rest of my life in peace. But that morning, my son Liam threw my luggage out the door and said, "Dad, get out." A check for $150 million was sitting on the table with my name on it. But before the story continues, hit subscribe and tell me which country you're listening from. I'm Harold Bennett, 67 years old, a retired mechanical engineer living by the quiet waters of Okanagan Lake, Canada. After my wife passed, I spent the rest of my life caring for my only son Liam and helping him and his wife build a better life. I was never a rich man, but I believed love and trust were enough to keep a family together. Until the day I realized, sometimes the ones you love most are the ones who push you the farthest away. I stood there in the yard, still holding my old travel bag. Around me, clothes papers, a few broken picture frames scattered across the tiles. That wooden house by the lake, the one I spent my life building, now looked like a silent battlefield. The wind passed through the pine trees, carrying the faint sound of rippling water. And in that moment, I knew I was no longer dad in my own home. Liam stood on the porch, eyes avoiding mine. He said softly, "Dad, I think this is the best for everyone." His voice trembled, but Nora's hand clutching his didn't. She spoke calm and cold, almost relieved. "We need our own space. You should find somewhere else to live." I said nothing. At 67, I didn't have the strength to argue. All I felt was the emptiness inside my chest. 5 years ago, when Liam's repair shop went bankrupt, I was the one who said, "This house is big. Come back here, start over. We're still family." And now, that same family was throwing me out like an unwanted guest. On the kitchen table lay a pale blue check, amount 152 CAD, printed name issued to Harold J. Bennett. I remembered that morning when I stopped by the convenience store to buy a lottery ticket. Liam had laughed. "Dad, why bother? No one ever wins those things." I smiled and said, "Sometimes luck just needs someone to try." I never imagined that little ticket would cost me my only son. It was Nora who found it while I was taking a nap. I woke to her scream echoing through the house, "Liam, we won." Their laughter filled every corner, calling friends, hugging, shouting in joy. I walked downstairs, ready to congratulate them. Then Nora turned around, her smile fading. "Oh, it's your ticket." I nodded. She paused, then said, "But you don't know how to claim it right. Let us handle it for you." That whole afternoon, they whispered, called, people laughed. I didn't know what they were doing. The next morning, the local news said, "A young couple in Okanagan wins $150 million. I saw them on TV, my son and his wife smiling, standing proudly beside a giant check, my name hidden under Nora's hand. I didn't feel angry, just cold. I used to believe that no matter what mistakes our children make, they'd always remember who raised them. But when Nora threw my suitcase onto the ground, I understood greed can erase even blood. I left the house quietly. My old pickup coughed to life, carrying what little I had left, my notebook, a few photos of my wife, and Rusty, my old dog. I drove along the lakeside road, the afternoon light glinting on the water like shards of broken glass. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to leave the place where every breath whispered the same question: what did I do wrong? To the son I loved most. That night I found a small motel room on the edge of Kelowna. Damp walls, narrow space, but quiet. I bought a loaf of bread, fed Rusty, and sat by the window. Outside, a soft rain fell under the dim yellow lights. I turned on the TV, and there he was, Liam, smiling, talking about a new life and fresh investments. Nora sat beside him, holding his hand. She said, "We'll use this money to rebuild our lives, so we'll never have to depend on anyone again." I smiled faintly. Her words cut deeper than she knew. Never depend on anyone. Not even the father who carried them through every storm. I turned off the TV and pulled out a photocopy of the check, the one I kept before leaving. Under the warm yellow light, the name Harold J. Bennett stood clear, cold, like the truth waiting to be told. I folded the paper, slipped it into my notebook, and wrote the first line of a new journal. The day I was thrown out of my home, but maybe this is only the beginning of something they never saw coming. I didn't know then that just a few days later a neighbor would send me a video that would change everything. 3 days had passed since I left that house by Okanagan Lake. The rain hadn't stopped, and the damp cold of British Columbia seeped into every bone in my body. I hadn't spoken to anyone, just stayed inside that small motel room living off coffee and bread. Every night I'd unfold the photocopy of that check, look at my name printed clear as day, reminding myself that everything that happened wasn't some bad dream. On Wednesday morning, I found a small envelope slipped under my door. No return address, just a few shaky words written by hand. You should see this. Inside was an old black USB stick. I didn't know anyone in this area, so for a moment I hesitated. But curiosity won. I plugged it into my old laptop, and the screen flickered on, showing a grainy video shot from the backyard of my house. The first frame showed me standing in front of the lottery machine at the corner store. I picked my numbers, fed in the cash, and printed the ticket. Then Liam walked in, with Nora. She was smiling, leaning against the counter, asking the clerk, "If someone wins, does the name on the ticket have to match the payment card?" The clerk answered. "Of course, otherwise you can't claim the money." I saw myself put the ticket into my jacket pocket and turn to leave. And in that moment, Nora's hand slipped in and pulled it out. The camera caught it perfectly. I sat there frozen for minutes. My heart pounded not from anger, but from a deep sadness and regret. I had trusted them too much. Everything I had, the house, the savings, my pride, I'd given it all to my son, never imagining he'd betray me. I replayed the video again and again, then saved it to my hard drive, made another copy on a memory card. I didn't know who sent it, but it was the first real proof of the truth. That afternoon, I took Rusty out for a walk. Passing the old post office, I overheard two men talking. That couple from Okanagan, they're famous now. Won $150 million planning to open some electric car garage or something. I smiled faintly and walked faster. The word garage cut deep. That was the dream I helped Liam start 5 years ago. The dream he gave up halfway. And now he was rebuilding it with money stolen from his own father. That night I got a call from an unknown number. A young woman's voice, gentle and calm, "Mr. Bennett. My name's Lucy Tran. I'm a community lawyer. I've helped a few seniors with property disputes. Would you be willing to tell me what happened?" I hesitated. I'm not one to complain, but something in her tone made me feel safe. So I told her briefly the whole story. She was quiet for a while, then asked, "Do you have any proof that the ticket belongs to you?" I said yes, and I think I just found something they never expected. The next day we met at a small roadside cafe. Lucy was in her early 30s, bright eyes, calm, determined. She watched the video, then smiled slightly. "This is strong evidence. But just to be sure, how did you buy the ticket?" I pulled out my phone and opened my bank history. June 15th, a $5 transaction from Lotto Canada, online purchase. Lucy nodded. "Perfect. That means the ticket's tied directly to your card, which means the prize legally belongs to you. No argument." I couldn't believe it. A small light flickered in my chest. But that spark of hope was soon replaced by bitterness, because to claim what was already mine, I'd have to drag my own son into the light of justice. Lucy told me not to rush. She wanted to gather more information. She knew people like Nora were clever. I agreed. While waiting, I wrote a short letter to Liam. "Dad's still fine. I hope you're happy with what you've chosen. But remember, some things can never be hidden." 3 days later, I got an email from Lucy. "The Lottery Commission has confirmed the winning ticket, $150 million, belongs to an account under the name Harold J. Bennett. But someone's trying to change the registered owner." I knew exactly who that someone was. And I knew the fight I'd tried to avoid had now come to my door. I closed my laptop and looked down at Rusty curled up by my feet. Outside, the wind had picked up, shaking the trees. And in my mind, only one thought remained. If they were bold enough to cheat, then I'll let the truth reveal itself. I just didn't know that a few days later the entire Okanagan Valley would be talking about a lottery fraud investigation, and the first suspect would be my son. News travels faster than I thought. Just 3 days after Lucy's email, the local evening news ran a headline: Okanagan couple under investigation for $150 million lottery fraud. I sat in that little motel room, watching the TV screen reflect Liam and Nora's faces, both shielding their eyes from the cameras as they pushed through the crowd. The headline below read, "Liam Bennett and wife suspected in disputed ownership of winning ticket." I didn't feel proud, only heavy, tired. I never wanted to see my own son shamed in public. But the one thing I couldn't turn away from anymore was the truth. And truth needs light, not tears. The phone rang. It was Lucy. "Mr. Bennett, I just left a meeting with the Lottery Commission. They confirmed the claim was filed using a fake email. The IP address matches your home Wi-Fi." I was silent for a few seconds, then asked quietly, "So, my son did this himself?" "Yes, but I believe Nora was the one who started it. We're requesting a temporary freeze on the prize account until the court verifies ownership." I thanked her softly. Lucy's voice stayed steady, though I could hear a trace of sympathy. "I know this hurts, Mr. Bennett, but sometimes to protect what's right, we have to be the villain, in the eyes of those we love." That night a text came from an unknown number. "Dad, it's not what you think. I only did what Nora told me. I'll come see you. Liam." I stared at the message, my hands trembling. Half of me wanted to forgive him. The other half was afraid of hearing his excuses. Still, I replied, "The door's open. But come with the truth, not another lie." 3 hours later, there was a knock. Liam stood there, no longer the confident man from TV, just a tired son with red, swollen eyes. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know it would go this far. Nora said it'd be easy, just change the name on the form no one checks." I believed her. I didn't speak, just poured him some water and slid the glass over. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. "I want to make it right, but Nora's panicking. She said she's selling the new house and leaving before the police show up." I looked out the window. It was raining again. Deep down, I knew this was his last chance to choose what kind of man he'd be. I told him to stay quiet, wait for the lawyer's instructions. The next day, Lucy took me to meet the lead investigator on the case. They already had everything: the fake email, forged digital signatures, and a video of Nora burning the purchase receipt. That footage came straight from the store's security system, the same clip my neighbor had sent me. The investigator said, "Mr. Bennett, we ask that you keep all this confidential until the court issues summons." On the drive back, I asked Lucy, "If Nora's arrested, what happens to my son?" "He could still be considered an accomplice. But if he cooperates and testifies, he'll likely get a reduced charge." I nodded. I didn't want Liam behind bars, but I couldn't let him keep running either. Some lessons you only learn when you've hit the very edge of greed. That afternoon, reporters swarmed their house. Nora tried to hide her face, but the cameras caught her. She screamed into the microphones, "It's his fault. He's trying to steal the money back," pointing to a photo of me attached to the legal file. I turned off the TV and sighed. Fear does strange things to people. It makes them forget what they're saying and who they are. 2 days later, Lucy called me to her office. She handed me a sealed envelope. "This is the court's official confirmation. You are the legal owner of the winning ticket. The funds are being held until you sign for release." I stared at the paper, but didn't feel joy. I asked, "Is there a way for me to claim it without completely destroying my son?" Lucy looked at me, respect in her eyes. "You're the first father I've met who still thinks of his son in a fraud case. But forgiveness has to stand on truth." I understood. I signed. As I left the office, the clouds broke. Sunlight spilled between the buildings, glimmering on the Fraser River like silver. And I thought, maybe justice is like that sunlight, slow but unstoppable. When I drove back to the motel, I noticed a figure waiting by my door. It was Nora, her face pale, hair messy, clutching a leather bag. Before I could say a word, she whispered, her voice trembling, "Mr. Bennett, there's something you need to know before everything comes out." Nora stood at my door, soaked from the rain. Her face was pale, her makeup streaked down her cheeks. She looked nothing like the proud woman who once threw me out of my own home. I hesitated, then stepped aside and let her in. Rusty barked softly, then settled under the bed. "You didn't call the police?" she asked, her voice trembling. I poured 2 cups of hot tea and set one in front of her. "I believe justice knows how to find its way," I said, quieter than I expected. "You're not here just for tea, are you?" She looked up, the yellow light catching her frightened eyes. "I know I've done wrong, Mr. Bennett. But there's something you don't know." She paused, gripping her hands together. It wasn't just Liam and me. Someone else was behind it, someone who forced us to do it. My brow tightened. "Who?" Her gaze dropped to the floor. "A man from the Lottery Commission. He found out the ticket was registered twice. He threatened to expose us unless we gave him a cut. He wanted $10 million and said if we didn't pay, he'd leak the fake email." I stayed silent for a moment. Everything had just gotten far more complicated. Nora pulled out her phone, her hands shaking, and showed me the messages, real ones from someone demanding money to keep quiet. "I came to you because I know if I stay silent, he won't stop," she said, her voice breaking. "I've done too much wrong already. But at least I don't want to drag Liam down with me." I looked at her, and for a moment, I didn't see a greedy woman. I saw someone scared, trapped by her own fear and her hunger for more. "Do you still have copies of those messages?" I asked. She nodded. "I called Lucy right away. She answered, calm as always. 'Keep everything as it is. Don't let anyone know Nora's there. I'm on my way.' Half an hour later, Lucy arrived with an investigator. They took Nora's statement, copied the data, then escorted her to a temporary protective unit. I stood at the door watching the rain pour over the steps, spreading across the tiles like ink. Lucy placed a hand on my shoulder. "You holding up?" I nodded. "Just wish my son hadn't gotten dragged in so deep." "Mr. Bennett," she said softly, "truth hurts. But sometimes it's the only thing that wakes us up. Tomorrow the court will summon both you and Liam. Be ready." That night, I couldn't sleep. The rain tapped against the window, mixing with the wind like the heartbeat of old memories. I remembered Liam as a boy running around my auto shop, his little hands covered in grease, laughing every time he broke something. I once believed a father's love was enough to keep a child from losing his way. But maybe love alone can't always beat fear and greed. The next morning we were in court. Reporters crowded the hallway. I sat in the front row, Lucy beside me. Liam walked in thinner, tired eyes, avoiding mine. Nora sat behind, guarded by officers. When the hearing began, the prosecutor presented everything: the video of Nora taking the ticket, the purchase receipt linked to my card, the threatening texts from the lottery insider. The evidence was undeniable. Liam stood up, his voice breaking. "Your Honor, I take responsibility. I let myself be led the wrong way. But my father, he doesn't deserve what I've done to him." The courtroom went silent. I looked at my son, not angry anymore, just seeing a man finally learning what accountability feels like. When the judge read the temporary ruling, I knew the legal battle wasn't over, but inside something in me had settled. No matter what I might lose, money, time, peace, I had regained something far more precious: the honest eyes of the son who once lost his way. After the hearing, Lucy walked me outside. A rare sunlight broke through the gray clouds falling across all our faces. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "this case will take time, but at least truth has spoken its first word." I nodded, glancing toward the end of the steps where Liam stood waiting. His eyes searched for mine, hesitant. I walked to him, said nothing, and simply rested a hand on his shoulder. He nodded back, like a boy learning how to breathe again. On the drive home, I rolled down the window. The air carried the damp scent of rain and earth. Lucy's words echoed in my mind. Justice takes time, but it always comes. And I thought she's right. But justice doesn't just come from the courts. It comes from having the courage to face our own mistakes. What I didn't know then was that just a few days after that hearing, an anonymous letter would arrive at my door with an offer so unexpected it would take me a long time to decide whether I should even open it. 2 days after the preliminary hearing, I got a yellow envelope with no return address. The postmark said Toronto, nearly 2,000 miles from Okanagan. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, hurried but careful enough to stay legible. Dear Mr. Bennett, I'm the person Nora mentioned, the one from the Lottery Commission. I'm not proud of that. I just want to say if it weren't for the video you and your lawyer Lucy presented, I would have never been forced to face what I've done. I know I'm about to lose everything, but at least you should know that someone out here is trying to make things right. Thank you for not seeking revenge. I read it a few times. No anger left. Just a strange stillness, like the world had finally decided to rest after a long storm. I placed the letter in my drawer and looked out the window. The sky was clear that day, and Okanagan Lake shimmered like a mirror reflecting the distant snow-covered peaks. The trial dragged on for months, but with all the evidence laid bare, the court finally ruled that the entire prize rightfully belonged to me. Nora was convicted of fraud and forgery. Liam was cleared thanks to his cooperation and honest testimony. When the judge read the verdict, I didn't smile, didn't clap. I just felt lighter. Because what I wanted back was never the money, it was the truth. After the final hearing, Liam came to see me. He didn't bring luggage or gifts, just an old leather notebook. Dad, he said quietly, I know saying sorry doesn't mean much now, but I want you to have this. I opened it. Inside were messy notes, business plans, sketches of a small auto shop, scattered numbers. On the last page, a line written in haste. If someday I get to start over, I want to finish the dream I left behind. I looked at my son. He was thinner, his eyes no longer burning with that reckless pride from the lottery days. Instead, there was something new, awareness, the kind that only failure can teach. I said softly, you don't have to keep apologizing, just live right. The rest time will heal. We went back to the old cabin by the lake where everything had once begun. I opened the door. Dust lay thick on the tables, but everything else was just as it had been: my wife's photo, the wooden clock, and that small sign on the wall. Home isn't a place, it's the people. Liam quietly wiped each picture frame. I built a fire, made tea, and sat by the window watching the golden light spread across the calm water. A month later, I finalized the transfer of over $10 million to start the Bennett Foundation for Second Chances, a vocational training fund for underprivileged youth in Vancouver. I wanted to help those who'd lost their way, like my son once did, find a chance to begin again. Reporters came asking how it felt to give away nearly a quarter of my fortune. I just smiled. I'm not giving it away, I said. I'm just returning to life what it once taught me, the value of a second chance. Since then, life has been quiet again. I left the city and moved back into my small lakeside house, raising Rusty tending apple trees, reading every morning. Simple, peaceful, more complete than ever before. Liam visits once a month now. He works as an engineer at the Foundation's training center, no longer using the Bennett name, never mentioning the past. I let him be. Because sometimes the truest way to atone is to start again without expecting recognition. One autumn afternoon, with yellow leaves piling at my porch, I received a postcard. No signature, just a few short lines. Thank you for not turning your back on those who lost their way. Someone given a second chance. I smiled, folded the card, and set it beside my cup of tea. Rusty lifted his head tail, wagging softly. Outside, the sunset stretched across the lake, painting everything gold, and I thought, maybe happiness isn't about winning or losing. Maybe it's simply refusing to let bitterness turn you into someone you're not. I closed my eyes, breathed in the scent of wet grass and pine, and I realized after all the loss, my life had finally found its course again. Simple, peaceful, and bright enough to guide anyone still searching for their own second chance. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of my story. My name is Harold Bennett, and this is just one of hundreds of real stories about people, greed, and redemption. If you believe that everyone deserves a second chance, then hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the stories that touch the heart and make you rethink what true happiness really means. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.